Caribou are an iconic Canadian species proudly displayed on our 25-cent coin. But in the wild, many herds are on the verge of disappearing. Since the 1990s, some populations like the Bysouth herd in British Columbia have declined over 50%. Across Canada, caribou face threats from habitat loss, altered predator-prey dynamics, and human disturbance.
In most cases, humans have an important role to play. Spruce forests or pine forests, this is where they live. And we humans also prefer these forests when it comes time to obtain wood for construction or pulp to produce paper. So we cut down the forests, which is the same forest that shelters the caribou that is so important to their survival.
But dedicated conservation efforts, led by Indigenous communities, Parks Canada, and academics, are fighting to ensure for a sustainable future for caribou. So today we're going to explore caribou conservation by looking at 3 different case studies from 3 different types of groups engaging in conservation efforts. We're going to be looking at an Indigenous-led conservation effort, one run by the federal government through Parks Canada, and then one that's facilitated by academic researchers at Canadian universities. Let's get started. So let's start off by talking about Indigenous-led caribou conservation. Caribou play a vital role in the ecosystems and cultures of Canada. From the boreal forests to the Arctic tundra, caribou are uniquely adapted to habitats across the country. For Indigenous peoples, caribou have long been essential for food, clothing, and cultural practices. In many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities, caribou hunting is seen as a way to maintain kinship, pass on traditional knowledge, and exercise treaty rights. In central British Columbia, the West Moberly First Nations and Saulteaux First Nations have brought a herd back from the brink of local extinction.
Last 2 years, the calves that we released into the wild, they weren't just eaten by wolves and bears. They've actually survived and they're still here. And some of them are actually in here right now reproducing, which is amazing.
Through a combination of short-term population recovery measures, like maternal penning and predator management, and securing long-term habitat protection, they've seen the herd grow from 38 animals in 2013 to 114 by 2022. This Indigenous-led conservation is not only helping caribou recover, but maintaining cultural practices and livelihoods that are tied to caribou.
I used to work in oil and gas and you know, a lot of that stuff where we're kind of extracting resources, and so to be part of something that's opposite that, you know, I can go to bed at night knowing like, yes, you know, I'm contributing to this, right? Whereas before I was putting money in the pocket of whatever corporation or oil and gas companies or, you know, corporate folks out there, and now I'm actually putting it towards those animals and those little baby calves and into the trees and, you know, the air we breathe, and just this habitat, to be able to preserve it and be part of it directly is like the most gratifying thing, and it makes the job like not even a job really, it's an opportunity.
Next, let's look at 2 initiatives that the federal government is doing to protect caribou herds. In Jasper National Park in Alberta, Canada, Parks Canada is playing an innovative approach to rebuild small southern mountain caribou herds. They'll be creating a conservation breeding facility right in the national park. There, a captive herd will produce calves to release into the wild, supplementing small at-risk populations. Within a decade, they aim to bring herds like the Tonquin from under 50 caribou to 200 or more. Collaboration with Indigenous partners and scientific experts from around the world has been key in developing this program. So in addition to the amazing work that's being planned for Jasper National Park and the caribou there, let's also look at the work being done by the federal government to protect and monitor caribou in Manitoba.
We have a network of 92 trail cameras out on the landscape to document how many caribou there are and where they're going. This work is a direct result of our Beyond Borders Caribou Workshop, where we brought together Indigenous, academic, and government agencies to chat about knowledge of caribou in our park, specifically the Cape Churchill caribou herd. Here we are, part of our caribou study is on beach ridges. Caribou and other animals use these beach ridges as natural highways. It's a lot easier to walk along and migrate on a gravel beach ridge than it is walking through the fen and ponds. We have half the cameras in fen habitat and half the cameras on these beach ridges to document the differences of occurrence on each habitat type.
Finally, let's look at how researchers are using lichen to restore caribou habitat. Caribou are diet specialists, relying heavily on lichen in the winter, but their lichen supply is often destroyed in wildfires.
Lichens are a symbiosis. So in this case, you have a fungi that's in relationship with an algae, and if you look at the caribou, it's one of their major food source. So that's one of the reasons we're here, actually try to understand how these reindeer lichens are distributed to understand where would be really good areas for caribou and not so good areas.
Researchers have found a way to restore this critical caribou habitat faster by transplanting lichen into burned areas. They've confirmed lichen can survive and regrow, accelerating the return of productive caribou habitat. This technique can help recover caribou's winter food supply, alongside other habitat restoration efforts after fires. From the wilderness to maybe somewhere closer to where you live, caribou are a cherished part of Canada's wildlife. No matter where you live, you can aid caribou conservation by supporting Indigenous stewardship, visiting national parks responsibly, and reducing your own carbon footprint to combat climate change effects on caribou habitat. With collaborative efforts like those in BC and Jasper, there is hope. Once down to 38 animals, the Clinzé-Czar herd was now tripled in size, proving that together we can ensure caribou remain on the land. And if you want to learn more about any of the stories we talked about today regarding any of the caribou herds, you can find more information in the description below. And I'll see you all in the next one.